As you can imagine, this is not a decision emergency crews have made lightly, but by 11 o'clock tomorrow morning, they will have scoured the areas they set out to on this second phase of the search for the 4-year-old. Australian Defence Force personnel followed a wider circumference from the homestead where Gus was last seen 19 nights ago.
According to 9 News, the latest search for 4-year-old Gus Lamont is likely to end today, with police and troops yet to find any trace of the South Australian boy. Search crews, including the Australian Defence Force and SES, were out in the landscape surrounding Yunta in South Australia's mid-north from first light this morning, searching for fresh clues to try and find out what happened to the boy who has been missing since September 27th.
Experts say it's possible he could have walked to, but still there's nothing. When he went missing, he was wearing a sun hat, a t-shirt, pants and boots. None of that has been found. The operation has been physically demanding too. Today temperatures have reached 36 degrees and strong winds have whipped up dust.
Today marked day 4 of an extended search under the name Task Force Horizon to try to find Gus, with a focus on a 5.5 kilometre radius around the remote homestead from where he went missing. Today is also day 20, 1 day shy of the 3-week milestone since the blue-eyed little boy vanished.
You can only imagine how devastated his family must be, having to say goodbye to these search teams without any answers. Tomorrow marks 3 weeks since Gus's grandma last saw him, since anyone last saw him. He was playing on a pile of sand out the front of their house. He was left unsupervised and next minute he was gone. He simply vanished.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't feel. My mind fills up into a creature and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science. So this whole idea of Gus vanishing in this sort of 30-minute period where he was unsupervised reminds me a little bit of the Madeleine McCann case, where you have these intervals between the doctors apparently checking, and during this period when those children are unsupervised, something supposedly happens. It's the same kind of scenario. I don't think that is what happened to Madeleine, and I also don't think that is what happened to Gus. But before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. A big thank you to Hannah Ho for your super thanks. If you haven't yet hit the thanks button, now's your chance. Thank you very much, and let's get started. According to the Daily Mail, tracker and former policeman Aaron Stewart, who has assisted in the investigation, said, "I honestly believe the answer is back there on the property. Go back, rethink it, re-interview everybody, but take them back not 30 minutes, take them back a week." And that is the sentiment of a tracker and former policeman, Aaron Stewart. I've got to say, I support what he says. I also agree with what he says. We need to go back in time to figure out what happened. We need basically to get into a kind of time machine to really reconstruct the events. What Stewart is hinting at here is the domestic pattern. What was typical and what wasn't. What was unusual. It's the same technique we used in the investigation with Madeleine McCann. She was on holiday. What happened every day after day after day, and then what happened on the day that she disappeared, right? It's looking at patterns and looking at distortions in those patterns. I think the obvious psychology when it comes to the landscape of a farm is to look outdoors, but perhaps counterintuitively, Gus may be found closer to a shelter. I don't think the search should be focusing on where buildings aren't, but where they are. Interestingly, a man went missing fairly close to the area on the day before Gus disappeared. That was September 26th. And I'm sure Conspiracy True Crime will jump onto this, but it doesn't make sense that he'd take Gus and abandon his car. You know, if he took Gus, he would take Gus in the car. If his car also disappeared, then sure, but it didn't. Back to the Daily Mail. Officers have appealed for anyone who travelled the Stewart Highway between Port Augusta and Glendambo on the afternoon of September 26, particularly those with dashcam footage to speak to them. Several truck drivers reported being concerned by the vehicle's erratic driving that day. Now, I would imagine the police would have made the same appeal in terms of Gus. Did anyone driving on the highway see any vehicles on the 27th? This is in terms of Gus Lamont. And the fact that they haven't and that they don't is quite interesting. Now, I don't know whether the vehicles that are involved in this case have telemetry, because you can also track vehicles based on their own, I don't want to call it browser history, but their telemetry will tell you the movements of these vehicles, at what time, the starts and stops, when a door opened, when a door closed. And so that can also provide some additional context. Certainly the vehicles in terms of the Oak Park station. According to the Daily Mail, the coincidences have raised alarm bells among locals who are asking whether there could be any connection between the two events. However, a South Australia police spokesman said that the police are not investigating any connection between missing person Benjamin and Gus. I don't think there is a connection, but it is pretty interesting, pretty crazy that an adult goes missing and then a child the next day. It's kind of crazy. And that makes you wonder what was going on at that time that this was taking place. Well, in a very broad way, it was the weekend. What do people do on weekends on farms that they don't normally do? Back to the article. Former New South Wales homicide detective Gary Jubelin, who led the investigation into the disappearance of William Tyrrell, told Daily Mail Australia that officers would be looking further afield just for the sake of thoroughness. And then he said this: things can be missed. Minute things can be missed. I have to say, when you look at the footage of these soldiers walking, they kind of marching. They're walking quite fast. And are you going to notice, and there's quite a big distance between the one and the other, and are you going to notice something quite subtle, perhaps under a bush or something? I'm not sure if you really would. I do think what you probably would notice is a whiff, if that is the case. But I mean, that is once again this whole idea of too little butter over too much bread. One thing there can be no doubt about is that things were missed somehow, or perhaps not just missed, hidden, or worse, buried. The question is, can what has been hidden be found and be brought into the light? Well, I'm not going to take it further than that. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.